on? Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Board of Supervisors meeting this morning. It's nice to see all of you. I'm going to invite Supervisor Munzer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, but I would like to ask for a moment of silence after he's done to honor our veterans right after the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Is there a motion to acknowledge certificate of posting?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is our presentations, and it's always an honor to honor folks in the community. And we're going to bring up one of my favorite people in San Benito County. And I believe, Supervisor Botello, you will be making the presentation. So I will entertain a motion to pass this proclamation.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Supervisor Botello, you are on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And may I introduce and welcome Al Castaneda to our podium, please? Good morning, Al.
Good morning.
How are you doing? Anyway, Madam Chair, Board of Supervisors, people of San Benito County, we're honored to have Al Castaneda here this morning. And Al, let me tell you, it's not very often that we have a recognition and a proclamation for somebody retiring from the private sector. And the board felt very strong that we wanted to honor you for all of your lifelong accomplishments and your generosity to our community. Al has been a successful businessman in San Juan Bautista and has helped the community in immeasurable ways. He's a role model for all of us. He started from very humble beginnings, worked hard his entire life, valued his family and his community and the whole county. And that's why we're here this morning.
Thank you.
And, he served as a role model as far as if you work hard, keep your goals, you'll accomplish great things. And also maintain a very generous heart. And it's certainly a privilege to be able to speak to that here this morning.
Thank you.
You know, on a personal note, Al has been a friend of my family's for,
since I got here, 1952.
a long time. A little bit before I was born.
Yes.
But, and we're, always been friends. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is, on occasion, is going to Al's restaurant, having a newspaper, eating some chips, enjoying a margarita, and having, my lunch. And on his walls is a lot of history for Al's family and all the generous gifts that he's given over the years. And at the table that I get seated at, I got a kick out of at one time. I look up on the wall, and there's a little proclamation. When I was at the fire department here in Hollister, we would raise money for burn victims. And Al and his family were very generous, so he gave money to us, and it's still on the wall from the 1990s. And I get just a thrill out of that. A few weeks ago, we had a presentation about marijuana. And the presenter came from Sacramento. And the only way we got him down here was that we promised him lunch at your restaurant.
All right.
And one last note on a personal basis, one of the things that
I'm glad
Al...
he went there with that.
is that, one of the things Al does is if there's a family member in our community that passes away, there's always, the funeral and the reception afterwards at the Vets Hall. And I got to admit, this is a confession to you, Al. One of the things that makes those funerals so enjoyable is seeing a platter of your food there.
All right, thank you.
And I've learned over the years to stand first in line, closest to the food line when it's acceptable to go eat. That's where you'll see me socializing. So with that, I think maybe after I present this proclamation, maybe a couple of my colleagues might have something to add. But in recognition of the contributions of Al Castaneda to San Juan Bautista and San Benito County, whereas Alfonso Al Jose Castaneda was born in Mexico in 1945 and came to the United States as a young child at the age of 6 years old, whereas Al Castaneda became a United States citizen when he was 9 years old and living in San Juan Bautista with his family that included a mother, Amparo, did I pronounce that right? Castaneda, and his grandparents, Jose Carmen Castaneda and Esther Padilla Castaneda. Whereas at a young age, Al Castaneda watched his grandmother, Esther Castaneda, cook on many occasions for hard-working families and single laborers who did not have a place to cook their own meals. Whereas Esther Castaneda was highly regarded as an excellent cook in San Juan Bautista and was approached regarding opening a restaurant. And whereas Al Castaneda was determined to assist his family when he grew older and did so by working multiple jobs as a young man, including as a meat cutter. And whereas Al Castaneda's dream of opening a restaurant came true in March 1982 when he opened up the restaurant that he would name Doña Esther after his beloved grandmother. And whereas Doña Esther's became known statewide for its excellent food and quaint ambience, and whereas Al used his success to contribute back to his community on numerous occasions and became a sponsor of many events and educational programs. And before I read the thereof, that's what, in your biography, there was a list of accomplishments and recognitions that you've received over the years. Very impressive. But I think the list of people that you have changed their lives is a lot longer and can't be put together. And that's what makes you so special, Al. Now, therefore, upon his retirement from a long, successful career, the San Benito County Board of Supervisors hereby issues this proclamation recognizing and commending Alfonso Castaneda on his many contributions to his community. And I present this proudly to you, Al.
Hey, I thank you. Wow. Thanks, Well, thank you all so very much. And it's, how appropriate for me to have Anthony present this, because his family is a prime example of what San Juan Bautista is all about. And the reason, perhaps, you're saying I had a generous heart or whatever, but the bottom line is it came from following the lead from his father, his grandfather, his uncle, because they were always there for the community, always there for so many families. I mean, I could go on and on about it. And then, of course, we had other great figures there, like the Nyland family and the Avenino family. I could go on and on there, too. But the bottom line is that it was easy for me to do what I did because I had a good lead. Your parents were the best, And anyways, I'm honored to be here. It's incredible that a kid that came from Mexico in 1952 would be up here receiving this honor. And to put it in perspective, it's just that, how could you get recognition for something you love to do? And it seems like what I did was not that big of a deal because I love doing it. I'm in the food business, and if we could help people along the way, well, you do it. And I thank you kindly.
Thank you. I'll let you stay there for just a moment. If anybody else would like to say anything, I'll look at anybody else.
Sure. My wife was the director, teacher, janitor at the little preschool
Remember that?
at the north end of town. And whenever she needed help with food, I believe there'd be times when the lunch program, you would step up to the plate and help her with that. That's just one thing that comes to mind for me, and your willingness to help your community. And I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Rivas?
Certainly, yeah. I want to thank Al for his years of, helping the community. Certainly, and I wish you the best in retirement. I grew up in San Juan. I didn't live in San Juan Bautista, but I went to school there from K through 8th. And so certainly I know the contributions you made to San Juan Elementary School, because it had an impact on me. All the times that you would give the donations for the athletic programs, that you would help the school out, was a fantastic thing. And now as an adult that I get to reflect on that, we need more people like you in San Juan Bautista and in San Benito County. So thank you so much, Al.
I thank you. Thank you.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Al, I'm going to throw an old name with you, and I know you know this person, and he's actually passed away, but he's always mentioned highly of you, and that's Henry Samaya. We used to have a group. He used to belong to a group called MAPA, and whenever there'll be a function, he'll say, "Oh, I'll call Al. He'll give the rice, he'll give the beans, he'll donate to any type of organization that will give back to the community." So, in behalf of the members of the community, and especially Henry Samaya, thank you.
I thank you.
El, I want to thank you personally. You have been a wonderful friend. You're an icon in this community. Your legacy is your help to those in need, and we thank you for that. The community thanks you. You're always there, and it's an honor to present this to you. So thank you again.
Thank you, Margie. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to public comments. Do we have any public comment cards?
Madam Chair, yes, we have Mike Corbin.
Okay. On public comments, you may address the board on any items that are not on the agenda. So if you haven't filled out a card and you wish to address the board, you may do so at this time.
I think this goes to you. Okay, thank you, Board, for letting me speak for just a second. I'm Mike Corbin from the Corbin Seat Company down on Technology Parkway. And the company moved here in 1998, New Year's, actually, from Castroville. So the important contribution is that we had an industrial building in Castroville, and we wanted to move to the city of Hollister, and we wanted to build a new, larger building. The considerations go like, okay, we're going to build an industrial building, 82,000 square feet. Is it zoned industrial? There's empty lots still on my street, but those lots are zoned to build other buildings in the same kind of category. So I guess my point is, as a business owner and somebody who needs a big box, they're very expensive. That building's like $6 million, right? So when you're going to build an industrial building, you're going to think of what's going to happen in the future in that area. So the zoning is important. I think one of the best shots that Hollister has to become part of the industrial economy as it's starting to perk up a little bit is Air Park is the greatest thing. And even when I moved here back in '98, I mean, we were looking forward to Air Park being developed and possibly businesses using the airport for transporting. Another thing you want to think about on industrial streets is there's a lot of trucks. And sometimes they're lost, and they're looking for the building. It's not good to have people in the streets in industrial parks. So they usually get wide streets, and there's very little foot traffic. So that's actually very important. So I think in terms of Hollister, we should always think of probably our best shot to stimulate jobs and economy is the air park and the technology area, is to preserve what the thinking would be of a business person looking at coming to Hollister. And that's where the decision's going to be made. The investment's always going to be, well, we got to build a building. What are we going to do with that building 25 years from now? You know, what's the workforce like? And we need the right kind of zoning. I'm not against homeless development. I'm for it. Actually, I have a very close family relative who is a homeless person, has been for over 25 years. And I have a lot of empathy, and I would like to see our area develop a homeless help. But I don't think that homeless people would be even comfortable in an industrial park. Well, thank you for your time, and I hope I'm just here to try to be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin.
Thank you.
You have Pat, is it Riley? Pat Riley.
Hi, I'm Pat Riley. Thank you for letting me speak. I wasn't totally prepared for this, but my family, part of my family, owns the Flynn Road Mini Storage, which would be affected by the homeless across the street. Flynn Road Mini Storage is in the city limits, and the jail and the juvenile hall and et cetera is in the county. And I've been in the county 42 years selling real estate, and I'd be more than happy to look for another site rather than having these homeless people who don't own cars necessarily walking into our town. And they do, the folks that do get out of jail, like the overnight stayers, and they get out of jail and they don't have a ride back into town, they walk through the orchard.
Ms. Riley, if you could address the board.
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate that.
All right, I used to be a teacher, so I had to address my
I
class.
understand.
Okay. And sorry, you guys. So I'm trying to picture this whole situation. The county builds this homeless shelter. Who's monitoring the homeless people? How do they get to town for groceries? My idea was to put them behind the social service building that we have on the San Felipe Road, on the frontage road. And there is some farmland back there that hasn't been dissed, and there's weeds, so it's not part of that farmer's. And I would love to investigate who owns it. There's already a road back there. There's already entrance into this farmland. Like maybe you could build something back there, because these homeless people need those services. And so if we put them over by the jail and they can walk to town with the guys who get out of jail, that's not such a good idea. Put them where they need help, where they can find a job, where their social services are there to help them. Welfare's there, Medi-Cal's there, and they all need that. Plus they need someone to work with them in their brains. They're not homeless because they got divorced and their kids went to college. There's problems there with these people. And in San Juan, I even thought of a property in San Juan Bautista. It's a village. They can cross the highway if they need to. There's a grocery store. We've had about 3 homeless people in San Juan that have all been accepted and taken care of and helped in our little village. So if you need help finding another location, I don't see these homeless people next to the jail or taking up part of the county like that. I think they need to be closer to town. It's almost 3.5 miles from where you want to build into town. And I can't see them walking the highway, riding their bikes or whatever. And I think I have had clients move to Chico. Chico has a big open door policy for the homeless, and now they've got severe problems. Maybe somebody from the board could talk to somebody on the board at Chico about what they're doing, because of the university, and Birdwell Park now is full of homeless people. So any help I can give you, I'd like to. And like my family said, they had no clue that this was going to happen because nobody in the city notified them of this. So that's why I'm here.
Thank
okay?
you very much.
Thank you.
Any other speaker cards? Anyone else from the public that would like to address the board on items that are not on the agenda? Okay, there appears to be none. We'll move it to department head announcements. CAO Espinosa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have an announcement out of our Health and Human Services Agency. We have Jim Riding Sword to be followed by Brent Barnes to comment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is our homeless update. So the first thing I'd like to report to the board is this week we were notified by the state that we have received an allocation of $166,000 targeted for homeless families who are also on the CalWorks program. We discussed that allocation with them yesterday, went over the details of it, and we expect that to begin to move forward as early as December. The basic idea there is to help homeless families who are also on the CalWorks program to find temporary and permanent housing to meet their needs and to help them kind of transition from homeless into being more self-sufficient. So that's the first item. The second item is we have been in discussion for the last 2 months regarding winter shelter programs. We've been meeting with the Homeless Coalition to discuss that. We started having discussions about 2 months ago about expanding winter shelter programs at the Migrant Center. We talked with the Farm Labor Association about that, and they're okay. We have some new funding that the board has already approved coming in the neighborhood of about $150,000. That was called the Intergovernmental Fund Transfer that we brought to you, I think, in September. So that money can be put to this use. We've had conversations with the city about putting up some funds for expanded winter programs. And since it started raining yesterday, there seems to be a little bit more of an urgency to have this discussion. The idea is to offer an alternative, at least over the winter, for those people who might be affected by heavy rains and cold weather this winter. So those are those updates, and I think Brent has an update for you on sites in Sequa.
Okay. You have a question? Go ahead, Supervisor Botello.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, for that update. What is the status? I guess with the winter shelter is open, I believe, on November 1st, and today's the 2nd.
Yes.
It's probably too soon to know whether it's at capacity, or has there been a migration from out of the 4th Street River location up to the...
Yeah. It didn't open on November 1st because there's still some folks up there that are involved with farming and so forth. So the date that the Homeless Coalition has said to us is they expect to open by December the 1st or earlier, so sometime this month. That's what they said to us yesterday.
Okay, and the second question to follow up, it sounded like your department and the city and everybody's trying to work together to, try to move those folks and make sure everybody is accommodated. Some will go up to that migrant camp, and where there's pretty high level of expectations that you're sober and clean. And does that mean that the other facility, who's to operate that? Is it the coalition as well, or is it be us as far as the alternative shelter?
We were in discussion with the Homeless Coalition yesterday, going over details about, what would happen if they wanted to operate it, and so we're moving forward to probably amend the current contract, bring an item back to the board in 2 weeks on this issue. If the Homeless Coalition decides they don't want to operate it, and I hope that they do, because I think it's just an easier transition to do that. But if they don't, then Health and Human Services will put something together to try to make that happen.
And the expectations would be, the same as we would have at
the other shelter as far as being clean and sober.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Yes, Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, and so I hope that we can have a regular agenda item at our next meeting regarding this, because this is a big issue, in my opinion. I think that there's no doubt that we need the extra beds and be prepared. But we're talking, this is November, and I know that, Jim, you had stated that this has been in the work for 2 months. Well, I attended the Homeless Coalition meeting last Saturday, and it was the first time we had heard about it. The coalition had heard about it. And as a supervisor, I was concerned at that meeting because I heard two things. One, Homeless Coalition, are you prepared to handle this? Which I don't think the Homeless Coalition is prepared to handle it. And two, if you don't handle it, the county is prepared to handle it. And as a county, I don't think that we are prepared to handle the undertaking of operating an emergency shelter. And if, I need to be convinced that we are prepared. And maybe you can help bring that discussion, but it's November 3rd, and we are way behind the ball on this, and it's absolutely unacceptable. And just to assume that the coalition can fund this, I mean, what kind of impact are these additional funds going to have on the original grant? I mean, there's a lot of questions that I have that I think need to be addressed in a regular meeting, not during department head discussion, or announcements, but we need a regular agenda item for this. Thank you, Madam.
We plan to have an agenda item on your November the 17th agenda.
Okay. And CAO, you'll make sure that it
I'll make
gets
sure
there.
it gets
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other questions of Jim before?
Madam Chair, my perspective, short of, Brown Act, when you bring back the item on the 17th, make sure that we talk about potential general fund impact to it, too.
We will. We always do on our items.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Supervisors, good morning.
Good morning.
My role in this is to talk about the environmental process and the site selection. I handed out at each of your places, and I placed on the back table for the public, a very brief one-page site selection criteria, site evaluation criteria matrix that we developed earlier I guess it was actually last week, on staff. The rating factors are pretty self-evident: proximity to neighbors, compatible land use, proximity to transit, and so on. I'd be happy to talk about those in more detail. We also listed a number of fatal flaws that, for example, if the building, just to pick one, if the building or the site were on an earthquake zone, straddled an earthquake zone, that would obviously be a fatal flaw for a residential property. If there was an existing building there that required rehabilitation that's beyond the level of the norm that could be used to convert the building to residential use, that would be a fatal flaw. It would just simply be too much money to pursue the project. So without reference to any site, we have about 6 under discussion right now. We're going to use these criteria and anything else that the board might suggest to evaluate those on a peer-wise basis, and then move forward with a detailed evaluation of the best of those that rises out of that process. And we'll bring back a report, as I mentioned, to each of the board meetings as we move through the environmental review.
Brent, I have a question.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
in regards to the preferred site,
Yes, ma'am.
these would all be on the same matrix, so to speak, showing
Single
what
sheet
each
of
of these
paper.
properties
Yep.
And how they compare to.
Right. I'm not. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not anticipating that we would rank a site on proximity to neighbors, just to pick the first one
Okay.
on a 1 to 5 basis, but it would be a yes, no, within 500 feet or whatever, and it's a yes, no kind of criteria. I think that there'll be enough variation between the sites that we'll be able to intuitively see which one is the best, and then we'll come to you with a recommendation, a strong recommendation that we move forward on a particular site.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's all right, I'm
That's
done.
it? Okay, any
Other
other
questions?
No? Okay, thank you for that, and we'll have an agenda item next on
Yeah,
the 17th
17.
to fully discuss this.
A question then. Do you want this to be a part of the overall agendized item, or do you just want it under director's report? I guess we'll be taking a recommendation from the board. So
Yeah, so it'll be a regular item.
Item.
We'll put it on as a regular item.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, so we have our OES manager here, Kevin O'Neill. He has a report out to the board.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to make you aware of and invite you to 3 public information sessions we're going to be holding in regards to El Nino. They're going to be held on November 16th, 17th, and 18th. The 16th, it will be held in San Juan Bautista in the council chambers. The 17th will be held here in the board chambers. And the 18th, will be at Southside School. And so I want to invite you to attend. We're going to talk about El Nino forecasts, what people can expect as far as impacts to their houses, how to prepare. The Red Cross is going to talk about personal preparedness. Police and fire are going to talk about sandbags, driving, and we're going to talk to the public about what we've been doing as a county to help prepare for it. So I just wanted to invite you to attend. I have some flyers here. And there's a stack of flyers in the back as well for the public. If you have any questions or would like to speak during any of them, please let me know. And if you could please help get the word out as well if anyone's asking. And that's all I have unless you have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I wanted to remind the board on November 30th at 9 a.m. there's an assessment appeal hearing that the board needs to be present at, so I'd like to make sure you have that on your calendar. Also, the AAA Senior Citizens, we are going to be bringing that back to your board November 17th to appoint a couple of members or a member from our board to attend that. So I wanted to thank Supervisor Anthony Botello, Supervisor Margie Barrios for taking care of that last time. I know we may have a meeting from now till then before the board meeting. I haven't got a response from Clay yet, so if so, I'll make sure that one of you are aware of it, that we need to have attendance. We do have staff that will be attending as well. We have Maria Corona and Jim Riding Sword that will be available at those meetings, so I just wanted to make sure the board's aware of that.
Okay, if there's a meeting between now and then, Supervisor Botello or I will attend.
Okay, thank you. I've been asked by the city council has requested a joint meeting with the board to discuss parks and recreation, and I wanted to ask the board if they would consider meeting or having a joint meeting with them, and if so, we have a couple of dates outlined to see if that would work. I don't know if that would be. I just wanted to bring it back to the chair and poll the board.
Okay. Do you want to do that? You want to send us an email and we can respond to the dates, or would you like for us to get a consensus on?
No.
Okay.
Just for me, I would just respond to the council.
Okay.
That we would schedule a time.
Okay.
So.
And this would be a meeting in November or December?
Yeah, so a couple of dates that we have outlined would be December the 8th evening at 6 p.m. or December the 15th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
So.
I'm sorry, what was it again, Madam Chair? What date?
December the 8th evening, 6 p.m. or December the 15th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
December the
We will respond to that and
that.
let you know what's best for all of us.
Thanks.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to thank staff, administration, and staff members that actually helped out last Thursday. We had 308 employees attend the county barbecue. I also want to give a special thanks to the department heads and to the members of the board for donating for that event. So I think it was a well-received event, and there was a good feedback, and I just wanted to publicly thank everybody for that. Those are all the announcements I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Board announcements. We'll start with Supervisor De La Cruz.
None right now, Madam Chair.
Okay. Supervisor Rivas. No announcements, Madam Chair. Okay. Supervisor Botello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the veterans this month.
to honor and recognize them. I'm looking forward to going to Aromas Elementary School tomorrow. They have a great program that they honor veterans and pass out, different books that are kind of on a patriotic note, and I just want to recognize that.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the CAO for the barbecue the other day. I apologize. I was a little bit under the weather, so I stayed away from the food, and that's why I wasn't in the line helping to serve. And then I want to thank Mary Gilbert, the executive director of the of COG. I asked her if she could contact the CHP to have their trailer put out in Tres Pinas that informs the drivers of their speed. Tres Pinas, we have a little bit of a speed issue. It's supposed to be a 35-mile-an-hour limit, and cars and semis are blowing through at a much faster speed. So a couple of weeks ago, she had the trailer, or the CHP had the trailer on the southbound lane, and the last week it's been on the northbound lane. So I thank you, Mary, for that, and just want to inform the public that the speed in Tres Pinas is 35 miles an hour, and we have a lot of people that'll park and then cross the road, cross the highway to get to the restaurants that are in Tres Pinas. Yeah. And so I just want to make everybody aware that they do need to drive a little slower through Tres Pinas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. We received something from LULAC they're going to have, and I don't know if there's any information over in the back table, but they're having their annual Veterans Breakfast at San Benito High School cafeteria from 7 to noon on Veterans Day. And the proceeds from that go to the LULAC Scholarship Fund. And they are asking the county to provide certificates of recognition. So I will ask our CAO to put that on the agenda to make sure that they are prepared and received. I also want to thank the staff and the department heads, our CAO, our supervisors that contributed and helped for the Employee Appreciation Barbecue. It was certainly a success. It was a pleasure to see all our employees be there and enjoy the luncheon that was provided. So it was a feel-good day, and I'm glad that we were able to do that. Again, thank you to the department heads and our CAO for getting this together. I have received numerous calls from folks who live in North County, San Benito, North County area that has the high water levels and are very prone to flooding. If El Nino is to come, which I believe it is, Kevin alluded to that, they are concerned about Pacheco Creek. And Pacheco Creek has had a history of flooding. They want to know, what are we doing? Are we addressing any cleanup? There are trees that are, laying over the creek, and that will prevent the water to flow freely. And so they're concerned, so they just wanted to make sure that we're aware of it. Brent, the issues there, and I don't know what we can do. I know that usually there's a lot of preparation, and we need permits, and those have always been difficult to get.
I'm not entirely familiar with the details, but my understanding is that there are both live trees and down trees that are in the creek, in various creeks, rivers. Department of Fish and Wildlife controls those stream beds very closely, and we're not allowed to take equipment in or even to cut the trees without permits. It may be possible to station equipment on the side of the riverbank and drag large trees out. I don't know that for sure, but that's one way of approaching the problem possibly. But we're not able to go in without a permit, which we don't have, and cut the trees that are in the riverbed.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll have some follow-up information on that. So thank you, Brent. I appreciate that. And the last thing is that we're holding, I chair actually the Pajaro River Watershed Flood Prevention Authority, and we are having what is called a legislative conference. We have these conferences like every 2 years where we really get into some really deep discussions about what are we going to do because of the levee, our San Benito River, the Pajaro River others flow into the area in Monterey and Santa Cruz that has flooded in the past and caused millions and millions of dollars of damage to agricultural land, to personal property, and so that's always been in the forefront. And that's why this authority was created. So this legislative conference will be held Friday, November the 6th. This Friday, we're going to have people from the Corps of Engineers, which has always been a challenge because it's going to be more on a positive note because they have given us money to explore. We've done some excavation on the banks. We have done some cleanup. But, certainly the big thing that we would like to see eventually happen is to retrofit and fix those levees that they're only for an 8-year flood is what they're calling it, and they're not designed to handle what happened in 1998. So anyway, we'll have, like I said, the Corps of Engineers, Congressman Farr, different folks from the state. Our Anthony Canella, our senator, will be represented there along with representatives for Bill Monning and our Assemblyman Luis Alejo. And we'll be there. San Benito County will be represented, and Santa Cruz, Monterey, and Santa Clara counties will also be there. So hopefully we'll have some good outcomes, and maybe we'll get some promising results as to what can happen in the future to make that levee better for everybody. So thank you. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda items. Anybody from the board would like to pull in any of those agenda items?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to pull item number 9.
Number 9? Okay, Supervisor Dela Cruz pulling number 9. Any others? Okay. Is there anybody from the public that would like to pull any of the consent agenda items? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the others, 1 through 10, excluding 9.
So move.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, item number 9, Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yes, Georgia or...
This is a joint effort, so why don't we hear the questions and then we can determine the best answer.
Okay, perfect. I understand we in the past we approved the restriction of the departments. We're creating an entry-level position. Explain to me then how we're doing this.
Okay. What the department has done, and if I say this wrong, the chief will step in and correct this, is they're adding a lead, a senior level. The other levels currently exist. We currently have a probation officer 1 that is an entry level, a probation officer 2 that is a journey level, and a probation officer 3 that is a supervisor. What they don't have, which is very common in the field, is a lead senior advanced journey level.
Okay.
So that's the class that's been created. But as a piece of this, the industry standard for probation officers is the title Deputy Probation Officer. So what we've done is retitle and make the adjustment edits in the text of the class specs to have those follow suit. So as we create a senior level, that we change the number Probation Officer 1 to Deputy Probation Officer Entry, Probation Officer 2 to Deputy Probation Officer, which is a journey level.
Got that part. 2 simple questions. The first question is, did it change the salary range of any of these positions?
No.
Okay, so the grades are all the same, A, B, C, all the steps are all the same.
Correct.
Okay, and the second question is in the job descriptions, they're all consistent with some minor word changes, correct?
And the word changes are really changing out where the words Probation Officer 1 are to reflect the correct title within the text. We did not change the duties or any of the functions.
Okay. So in the future, in 6 months from now, 5 months, 6 months from now, you're not going to come before the board and say, we need to reclassify these positions because of the name, title, or the responsibility has changed.
No.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from staff? Okay. Any questions or comments from the public regarding this item? Yeah, I'll bring it back for a decision.
Madam Chair, I make a motion we approve the class specifications of Deputy Probation Officer Senior and the retitling the Probation Officer Series as Deputy Probation Officer Entry, Deputy Probation Officer, and Deputy Probation Officer Supervising, as well as minor edits to the existing class series.
Okay, there's a motion. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we'll move on to regular agenda items. First one, number 11, CAO Espinosa. If you could introduce that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, item number 11 on our regular agenda is going to be out of our Council of Governments. We have Mary Gilbert here to present this, and this is just the appointing of a member of the Board of Supervisors to the San Benito County and Santa Clara Mobility Partnership. Mary?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. At its October meeting, the Council of Governments approved a memorandum of understanding with the Valley Transportation Authority to establish the Santa Clara-San Benito Mobility Partnership. The purpose of the partnership is to work collaboratively between the two agencies, focusing on the State Route 152 corridor and potential improvements and realignment of that corridor. And part of that includes the State Route 25 area, as well as the Santa Clara County portion of Highway 25 and the N101 interchange. So all of those projects kind of combine together, and this is an opportunity for members of the policy boards to meet and discuss issues of mutual interest. So we previously had a mobility partnership. It was dissolved when funding kind of went away for the project, but we're looking at potential new funding sources and wanting to move things ahead. So we do have 2 COG members appointed to the partnership now, and the 3rd member from San Benito County does come from the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. And this appointment then is made, can it be made by the chair of the board, council? Is that,
yes.
That so? Because this, the mobility partnership includes most of the area that I represent, which is District 1. I'm going to appoint myself to be in the mobility partnership. But before I do that, well, I will officially do that. But I want to thank the chair of COG, and I believe it's Supervisor Munzer, for making sure that all of that worked out as it did. I think that was the result is to work collaboratively, and I think we are headed in that direction, and I appreciate all the work that you have done to make that happen. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to comment, I appreciate the willingness of VTA also to assist us in making this happen.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that you're thinking about them, because, yes, it does take the effort of all to make sure that it is collaborative and that you meet the needs of those that really want to be a part of it. So thank you. Did Supervisor Botello, you sit on the...
I'm very supportive of, the chair appointing herself to the committee. I think you'll do a great job there, and also commend Supervisor Munzer, putting this thing together and his leadership at COG. I just had a question, 2 questions actually. The funding sources, is that come out of CTC, and is it some legislation up in Sacramento that will allow this portion of the realignment to take place without the rest of the corridor?
Well, funding is still kind of a question mark, I guess, and part of the intent of getting together in the mobility partnership is to have a more collaborative voice going up to Sacramento. We talked about there might be potential meetings with our representatives in Sacramento, and talking to the CTC, and yes, trying to get more funding that way.
I think it's a great idea, reestablishing this committee. I served on it a few years ago, and we do need this east-west connector and this realignment, as it has a tremendous impact on our county with our other roads, and If we don't have a plan going forward or a group that is pushing this, nothing will ever happen. And so, I'm excited that, we're re-involved in this effort.
And I am too. I'm glad that we're all at the table because this is going to be very critical. It's going to be a long time coming, and I understand that. I know Supervisor Rivas, you served on the mobility for a while. I don't know if Supervisor De La Cruz has, but I know all of us will probably be a part of that at some point because it is, like I said, a long-standing committee. These things don't happen overnight, and so it will take a lot of planning. So I will appoint myself, as I said earlier, and hopefully we'll get a lot of work done.
Terrific.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 12, CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is coming out of the administration office. We have Sarah Montanos here. She's going to start off the presentation. This is with regards to sales tax. And we've had a few meetings with the intergovernmental and a few internal meetings as well, strategizing moving forward. And, time is starting to go. We're going to be in 2016 before we know it. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. So Sarah's here to discuss this with you.
Yes, good morning, Board of Supervisors. So, as you all know, potential sales tax measures has been the topic of conversation among the City of Hollister and San Benito County, and it's a topic that's commonly discussed at intergovernmental. At the last October meeting, which is what I'd like to kind of recap for you and go over, we had some interesting information confirmed for the Intergovernmental Committee. It was actually provided to the City of Hollister's Council on September 21st by the Lou Edwards Group, and it's relating to election timing. Basically, the Lou Edwards Group confirmed that election timing for the City of Hollister is restricted to, if they are to look for a general tax, November 2016. This confirmation brought up some interesting discussion at the intergovernmental meeting with how the City of Hollister and County of San Benito can work together. There were definitely some recommendations that were brought forward, which I'm going to leave for our board members to discuss and bring about. But a review of the conversation, the mayor, again, discussed the need for the extension for a 1% sales tax for the City of Hollister. Among this conversation was also the COG tax, or the transportation tax, and how that might also impact the ballots. The suggestion from the mayor was for a November 16 election and potentially COG being left off. Mary Gilbert expressed her concern for delay. An important point of City Manager Bill Rivera was that reminding the difference for COG that city roads and other local roads can be placed through an agreement through the COG measure. So today, from the board, I'm hoping as staff, just to understand and be able to better manage deadlines, is to have you guys discuss where you would like to be for the election. Would you like it to be on June or November? Would you like it to be both? I want to bring forward the thought of cost for both June and November, and pros and cons, basically, and present what different options you might have in order to do that. Again, the confirmation that the city is restricted to November was a big thing. The county's unincorporated measure is not restricted. We can go in either June or November, and that is the choice for all of you to make.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, very much for that. What I think that right after your presentation, were we going to have Mary come up?
Yes, if she's so
and
available.
see what COG, how they're moving forward, and if you've taken a vote on from your. Yes, please.
COG has not taken a vote on the actual date. However, we had a discussion about the potential for the June election at our October board meeting, and at that time we have scheduled to have a COG board retreat to talk about priorities for a sales tax measure that would be part of the expenditure plan that would go on the ballot, with the intent that if we can pull that, put that expenditure plan together and get things going, we would go forward for the June 2016 election.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So what I'd like to do is just inform the board at this time that, and I did before, but because now we have it agendized, I believe I did it only under board announcements, but through intergovernmental that Supervisor De La Cruz both sit in, it was recommended that the Board of Supervisors, the County of San Benito and the City of Hollister be on the November election. And the recommendation would be, because the city can only be in November, and this way we would be together with the same percentage, sending the same message in the unincorporated and the incorporated, and it would be less confusing for the voters, and that June would be the election for the COG sales tax initiative that they are moving forward, so for the transportation tax. So that is the recommendation that came from intergovernmental, and I support it. Supervisor De La Cruz?
I support it too, but I'd like to add some of my personal comments to that position. Is that one, if COG's going to go to the June election, I, as the supervisor for District 5, want to see that list of road repairs, that wish list. I want to see that. I can't go into the June election with COG putting it on the ballot going blind. I want to see a list of the roads that are going to be repaired. I want to see a percentage. I want to see what are we talking about fixing. And I know that's the process of COG, but I've asked for it for the last 6 months or so, and I had staff generate a list of roads here, and he said, "Here's the list," and I said, "Where's Wright Road? Where's Buena Vista Road?" And so I don't want to hear that the last minute that, oh, this is the list because we were under time constraint. So this is my request to my fellow supervisors and the members of COG is get that list. I want to see that list and hope that this board will also have input on that list before it goes to the public for a sales tax. That's my first point on the COG. The second point I feel that we need to do, if we are going to go with the city and go in November, I believe that we need to go and find out what the public wants, Madam Chair. And I don't think us asking them or having Sarah, with all due respect, Sarah, I don't think it will cut the muster. I just don't think so. I think we need to hire someone to make phone banks, do polls, do calling, and figure out what is it that we want to put from our county perspective on the measures, the language. It's very important. We're going to have a one-time opportunity to work together with the city on this in November if we do decide to go in November, but it needs to go with a higher percentage of odds in our favor.
Yeah, and I agree that we do need to. We as the board have decided not to do polling, but we did decide that we would hire a consultant to help us with the education part. And I think the message that, and I really appreciate, Sarah, what you have done. She has actually put together what the county provides for the community, what the department's needs are, what the needs are for the county as a whole, and how we can possibly get there together with this. Certainly, with a 1% sales tax initiative, we cannot, especially if it's general, we cannot say that we're going to use it specifically. But if we can, through education of the public and their input, really figure out what is it that San Benito County needs. This money, what can we potentially use it for? That would be our job. And so, Sarah, I don't know if you want to elaborate on consultants that are out there that can do this for us, but I think that would be, I believe, what this board wanted to be the approach. And we actually specified certain dates that we would like to do this coming up. If we go with November, we have a little bit more time to put this out. So, Sarah?
That is correct. We have an RFP that went out for professional services for education and outreach messaging. Again, that's not necessarily for or against any kind of sales tax measure, but general education about the county, its programs, and its services. I did bring it up at the last department head meeting that we were having a little bit of trouble getting proposals, but we have received some and we're continuing to advertise. So it's looking like we'll at least have qualified vendors to do that for us. If at least without the polling option. Right. So there's something.
So Madam Chair, is it too early to start planning for the November election?
I don't
Or-
believe it is. Actually, if we go in November, this is a perfect time to really start hiring the consultant that
Okay.
will help us do this
Okay.
and set the meeting dates. We have timelines that we have to meet, and we certainly don't want to be advocates for this. We want to be able to educate as to why we're doing it, but certainly not vote yes or vote no, correct? So,
Just as a reminder, the deadline to elections is, I believe, March 11th for that approved resolution and draft from the board to be at elections. And the other deadline, I believe, is June 12. So just a idea. So AITs would be to you probably February of this coming year in order to successfully meet the June election. And then April-ish coming up for November. So there is a 3-month kind of additional time span for November.
okay.
Does that
And
confuse you more?
Madam Chair, and then the third item, actually, this has been going on for about a couple of weeks already. Reading the project that we're going to entertain today at 1:30, and if it gets approved, there's a hotel that will be built in that project, and our TOT is real low now. So, if we're going to approve this project, I also believe that we need to revisit that TOT.
Yeah, and we probably will in the future. Certainly not on the agenda today, but yeah, it'll be something that'll come back. We've discussed that to do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I think what we're being asked to do today is to decide, number one, what is the percentage that we want? Do we want to match the city's 1% and kind of go out and send the same message for the percentage amount? Number two, do we want to have it in the November election or the June election? But Intergovernmental recommends November. And I think there's a third component. Sarah, am I missing one? Or were those, the length of time for
If you so wish, it is there if you guys want to determine that today. The other option being June and November or both, but then again, remind you of the additional election costs if we do both June and November.
Okay. Any comments?
Yes,
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yes, Madam Chair. On the if it's a half, 1 or 2/3, whatever that percentage, I believe that we need to first hear from the public, see how much they're willing to support.
We've already made a decision not to poll, so that's not going to happen unless the board changes their mind on that. But the polling is not part of the plan moving forward.
I don't want to go blind into this, Madam Chair. And I'll lobby the board right now. Can we revisit that?
We can always revisit any item.
Well, I'm putting it right now, Madam Chair. Can we revisit it right now?
Oh, I don't know. Council, I don't believe that that's on the agenda.
Right. So you'd have to add it to the agenda next time, and then you can talk to it to your heart's content and make whatever decision you want to make.
Okay, fine. Let me make it real simple, Madam Chair. Can you poll the board if there's 3 votes that are willing to put it on the agenda to revisit it? And that solves it right there. Then we don't have to put it in agenda, or we can put it in the
We
agenda.
can certainly do that.
I will support it, Madam Chair.
Okay, very good. We will do that at the end of the
Okay.
discussion. So Supervisor Rivas, did you have anything you want to add?
Not right now.
Okay. Supervisor Munzer?
I guess my feeling on this has been evolving, but I'm starting to swing over to have the county do a 1% to match the cities. And what I've been hearing from the city and from the mayor specific is that they are going to commit to using their 1% to improve what he's calling the quality of life. He's going to the city will use it to repair their streets, to work with us to build parks for our communities, and do things like improve our library. I feel that's is a good thing to go forward with. And as far as what Supervisor De La Cruz mentioned in repairing the streets, if we commit to repairing our streets also, then I think COG, if it is able to pass a sales tax, would do larger projects. The money would be committed some of the money would be committed to the improvement of Highway 25 north of town. And then I think we also need to identify, and I'm hoping that when we have our retreat, we'll have our stakeholder group there present also. We can identify larger projects, i.e. the way Measure A did it. And these are just throwing things out. Commit to improving Union Road to 4 lanes. Commit to dealing with some of the issues of Fairview. Identify major problems that San Juan has. So that we can have a list of projects that would identify larger projects as opposed to using COG money just to repair our surface streets, but doing the larger projects that we're going to have to do as a whole community to meet the transportation needs of the community as we grow. So I'm for working with the city, going with the November election.
The 1%.
And the 1%.
Supervisor Batella?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are on my mind as far as with these 2 taxes, the general tax. I think to answer Supervisor De La Cruz's concern and question as far as what the public would like to see, and I think we could assume that the higher the percentage we're asking for, the less likelihood of getting it passed. And if you were to poll people in my district, their concerns and needs are a lot different than people in your district. And, I think if we're to do anything, I'm not going to support 1% just because people say, well, you should be the same level as the city of Hollister. That's not happen with me. I'm going to support the 1% because of the needs of the county. And we have a lot of needs. We got to fix our roads, which the COG tax on its own level will not address half of it. But it's a start. So with this 1%, we still will be needing to address some of the transportation needs, just maintenance needs of our roads. Quality of life things that we all enjoy as a community and helps define us as parks and library. We have to invest in that, absolutely. But we also need to invest in the county's basic county services that we're struggling with. We're still struggling with as far as retention of our employees and adequate staffing. We have no code enforcement because of lack of staffing. We could pass all the ordinances we want and issue permits, but if we don't have anybody to go out there and make sure there's compliance, we have a real shortfall. I think part of this 1% and how we educate the public is that we need more money to function the way they expect us to function. And we have a long ways to go. We've made a little bit of progress, but we're way off. And I think the public could grasp that need. So the flexibility is have to be there by this board to weigh priorities and options after if the tax is successful. So I'm fine and shoot for the 1%. And as far as the length of duration, personally, I like holding government accountable.
I agree. Thank you for saying that.
So that's where I'm at right now. And with the COG tax, I think the city is to have their own priorities with the money that's their a portion of that's be generated, and the county is to have their priorities. And we ought to be able to have the flexibility to, if the public grants us this revenue, to do what our job up here and put the priorities to and fix the roads as best we can within our own jurisdiction. Thank you.
Supervisor Rivas?
Madam Chair, I as well support a 1% tax. I've said that from the very beginning. And I prefer that we do have the election in November, not so we can work with the city, but because you're going to have the highest turnout of voters, and we're going to have the best. Although I strongly feel that the numbers aren't in our favor, especially in rural San Benito County, as far as the likelihood that we can win. But it'll be tight, I think. But we at least have the opportunity to take advantage of a lot of local people going to the polls to vote in a very, what I'm sure is going to be a contentious election in November. As far as working with the city, I think that we have to walk a fine line in working with the city because we're two different entities. Our priorities are much different. I think these points have been very well. I have appreciated the points that have already been made as far as where our priorities are moving forward, which is in roads. Obviously, when you talk about rural San Benito County. And so I think that we do have to walk a fine line. I'm not willing to work with Hollister on coordinating our messages because I think our messages are different and they should be different, And so with that, I think that we are on the right track as far as planning for a November election. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
I have to say that I too support the November election for the reasons that have been stated. We do have our own needs, and I think, Sarah, what you have put together with the departments, what the services that the services that the county provides are very distinctive, and we have to make sure that the community understands that and that they know what it is that we do. I think that we can plan through capital improvement, through our budget process, we can plan on where we want to spend this money through that process, because certainly we cannot do it at the polls. We cannot say we're going to get this 1% and we're going to do this, this, and this. But if we can talk about a quality of life, we can during our budget process and our capital improvement plans, we can certainly add these things that we want to happen, such as better service, such as our roads, such as our library and our parks. Can we collaborate with the city? Absolutely. There are some projects that we want to do together. The library, we want to have the city provide more for the library, and they are willing to do more. That's one of the collaborations that I think is going to be huge if we are successful in getting this money. So yeah, I support November. I support the 1%, but it does have to have a sunset. We need to be able to prove to this community that we can be trusted. And if they trust us to collect this 1%, then we have to be able to show to them in a period of time that we can do this, this, and this with those monies. So I believe that if we have a sunset, I want to say that 7 to 10 years has been polled as successful sales tax initiatives. I don't believe no sunset has been successful unless it's very minute. And so I would like to recommend that we do 7 to 10 years so we can prove ourselves. So that's my position. Anything else that anybody else would like to add?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
So just to wrap it up so I can report back to the Intergovernment Committee, the board is going with the November election.
Well, we don't know yet. We haven't taken a vote yet.
Okay.
What I'd like to do at this time, Supervisor De La Cruz, if you would allow me, is to have the public comment and then bring it back for a true motion. Okay. Do we have any speaker cards?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Please come up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Supervisors. Mr. Munger, you mentioned that the city is interested in supporting the library. Supervisor Botello, Chairman, y'all both mentioned the county is interested in supporting the library. If you have this vote in November, city has it in November, and you're both supporting the library, how are you going to dance around the requirement for a 2/3 approval for Prop 218 when you have a county-wide, not a special assessment district, but a county-wide vote on a tax for the library? Prop 218 allows you to have a special assessment district 50%. If it's county-wide, You've got to have a 2/3, so be careful on how you word all this. You dance around it best you can. Don't be careful. Just be careful. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate your comment. And I know working through council and the elections department will make sure that we do with a general tax. We have to be very careful that it's not specific. So you're absolutely right.
Thank you very much for hearing these issues today. I believe that there has been a survey previously done that with COG that indicated that there was a favorable reception within the county for the 1%, and those issues of whether you needed 50% or 2/3, as the gentleman just mentioned, also came up. So I think shooting for that, but agreed that education is so important for the public to understand where the money's going and why we need it and what our surrounding counties have already done, and that we push our own progress to the rear unless we move forward with a taxation upon ourselves for the future. So I'm definitely supportive.
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing that up, because I know Sarah has also done some work on what other counties, what they're collecting and what they have done with the sales tax that they have received and the progress that they have made. So this way it'll give us a good something to compare to. So. Okay. Anybody else from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion. But I think before I do that, Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about this sunset? We didn't talk a lot about that, but I do know that when we received a presentation, one of the most successful initiatives have been when they do have a sunset in relation to a sales tax.
Yes, so I'd like to speak on 2 points actually about the sunset. One being the actual term, just looking at 2014 successful ballot measures, it was actually 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
Although there were quite a few in 7 to 10 and it was 50-50. I'd have to probably bring back that information. But the second point being, which I can't speak in too much detail about because it's not my area of expertise, but the bonding options. Mm-hmm. That is lacking with a sunset. So that ability to have that kind of progress with money up front is not there with the sunset. So that's something to keep in mind.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So there's the pros and cons on that.
Yeah.
You have a sunset, you cannot bond, but it's less likely to be successful if you don't have a sunset.
That's what the data's kind of showing.
A lot to think about.
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor Patella.
Yeah, that's where I was hit on when I asked to question Sarah on this is the bonding component. I know at COG where we've had some discussions about that, and I'm sure we'll talk about that particular issue with the COG sales tax. And it's important that we're able to bond, particularly with the COG tax, in the fact that our roads need addressing now. We can't compile a bunch of money and in 5 or 6 years from now address the roads. We have to do it right now, and the bonding will enable us to do so and then service that bond with the revenue of the sales tax. And there's a certain time period, I don't know if it's 10 years or 15 years, where bonding companies look at as far as what you need. And I don't know if that's something that we're considering for our general tax. If we have a laundry list of things that we're spending money on, in all likelihood, we're not a bond.
Right.
So, but with the COG tax, personally, as one representative on it, I would hope that we structure it where we can bond and get the projects that we want done.
And I believe that's the plan for COG, that it would be a 20-year 0.5% tax that is bondable. Right, Mary? Yeah, if possible. So, Yes, Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was going to, that was the other issue I was going to talk about too, is, if you put a sunset on it, you basically wipe us out of a bonding mechanism process, and in which the public won't see the benefits of right away. The public wants to see benefits tomorrow, today, whatever action we make today or tomorrow, and by putting a sunset that number, we're not going to have the flexibility to say, okay, Ray, we're going to fix these in the administration office. We're going to hop out with the county library. We're going to fix all these roads out there. We're going to build parks that can benefit the community. Without the bonding capacity, now it's based on how fast and who can, which is shovel ready and ready to go, and where can we get the biggest bang for this dollar? There will be competing projects. Every time we're going to talk about that sales tax if it does get approved in November. And that's why I understand what you're saying, accountability, the sunset, totally understand, but I think we need to maybe compromise somewhere in which we have the capacity to bond.
Now, is there, and I don't know if anybody can answer this, but I know there are opportunities for other financing for counties. I believe that there's I want to say NACO has financing. There's financing through maybe the CSAC Corporation.
CSAC as well.
So there are other than bonding, there's other financing. If we start collecting money and we know that we have the capacity to be able to pay back and plan, like I said, through our budget process and our capital improvement plans, that there are other means of financing projects. Yeah. So we do have other opportunity. So does that answer your question, that maybe bonding isn't the only way that we need to be able to get money up front for major projects?
Well, I mean, what's the old saying? What's 100% of nothing, right? So at least we'll get something. At least we get some projects done. If the sales tax gets approved.
Correct.
So I'm okay with that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Well, I guess I have a question. Reading the AIT, it's it says discuss and determine the preferred election, either the June or November. So are we able to determine a percentage and whether that will be sunsetted today, or do we need to come back on the 17th, have that discussion at that point, decide that we're going to do either the June or November date, and then come back and then throw in Supervisor De La Cruz desire to look and see whether we're going to do any polling or not on the 17th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that way staff maybe can come back, do the research, find out how long the tax needs to be in place in order to bond against it. And so we can have some more discussion about the length and everything.
Yeah.
Well, let's first find out what are our parameters for today. What of what we have discussed can we actually make decisions on?
My recommendation to the board, I mean, the number 2 item there gives us the flexibility to provide direction to staff, further direction with what we were just discussing. My recommendation, though, would be to let's go with the date, let's go with the percentage, and then let us do some more homework internally, get some better data analysis with the amount of years. I do know I just went to a CSAC ACAO meeting last week, and in that meeting there were some presenters there with reference to not bonds but loans for counties. They gave us some information. They gave us information where they don't loan out to everybody and for all projects. So you have to be really specific, and you do have to have some backing. So let us do some more research. I'd like to actually contact those individuals and actually see what we can do with this and look at the years as well, and come back to the board with a better, I guess, explanation of what we should do, or what the recommendation would be from staff.
All right, so that we could today decide on the term, I mean,
Yes.
the whether it be the primary or the
Yes.
general, and the percentage, and then give staff further direction on the sunset. And whether it can be bonded. It's their opportunity for other financing if we are successful.
That's great.
But to honor and to respect Supervisor De La Cruz in regards to the polling, maybe I'll just get a consensus from the board if we want to bring that back at the same time as we give direction to staff to bring other information back.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I'm kind of sticking with my same position unless some further information comes forward and how we're cover those type of costs. But anyhow, I'll make a motion that we commit to the November 2016 election with a 1% sales tax, included in my motion whether the determination and whether it sunsets or not sunsets will be determined on November 17th.
Okay, so we'll get staff recommendation on that.
To bring back more information whether or not we want to be able to bond against this revenue or not.
Okay, so, all right, is that clear? Okay. So that is your
No,
motion?
it's not. Did you throw in the percentage? I didn't.
Yeah,
Yes.
1%.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did not hear you say that.
Okay, there's a motion. Let me clarify. There's a motion for the November election with a 1% and to give staff direction to come back with information on sunsetting, bonding, and financing. Can you add that to your motion?
And financing.
And potential financing other than bonding. Okay.
Okay, I'll second that to be able to discuss it more.
Okay.
So my question would be if we are going to revisit polling and we've already determined a percentage, half your reason for polling is to see what the community would support.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I'm not enthused about polling at
Yeah.
this point in time.
Okay.
So that does not include polling.
I'm
in
just
that-
trying to be respectful
I
to
understand,
Supervisor
and I'll be
De La Cruz.
respectable when I vote too.
That says it all right there. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
So it's a 3-2. 3-2, is that correct?
Yeah. that's
Okay,
right.
so there's a 3-2 vote to move forward for the November election, 1%, and bring back recommendations on sunsetting, bonding, and financing. Okay? Very good. Moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we are due for a break. So let's take a little 10-minute break and we'll come back. Thank you so much. And we'll continue with item number 13.
At the meeting, they were saying that the developers already consented to that annexation piece.
Okay, if we could have everybody seated, please.
Here, I'll send it to you. Is what, and I read through it and I didn't see it. They consented to the city's mitigation.
Okay, I'd like to resume our meeting with continue on with regular agenda item number 13. CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this item's coming out of our RMA department, and we have Brent Barnes here to present this. And this particular item is receiving public testimony on the proposed San Benito County multi-use streets policy and requesting your board to adopt a resolution with regards to that. So we have Brent Barnes here to elaborate and discuss this further with you and the public.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
I'm delighted to bring to you this morning a complete streets policy for your consideration. Excuse me. Complete streets is a concept that's been kicking around for about 8 or 10 years now, and at the very most fundamental level, what it attempts to do is establish equity between motorized and non-motorized users of streets, recognizes that pedestrians and bicyclists are street users as well, and that other activities can occur on streets, like street fairs and farmers markets and so on. And it makes provisions in policy for those things to happen. The general plan that you adopted earlier this year recognizes the concept of complete streets in a number of goals and policies, and it's an excellent vision for the way we want to proceed with consideration of streets in our future developments. Today's action is really a beginning of the implementation of those goals and policies from the general plan, and it's a specific outlining excuse me, Halloween candy, sorry, a specific outlining of more detail about how the complete streets activity will be rolled out. Now, the Planning Commission at their October meeting considered and discussed this item in some detail and unanimously adopted a recommendation to bring this to the board. And I'd like to read the therefore be resolved so that you'll have that in your mind as you consider this. Now, therefore, be it resolved that by the Planning Commission of the County of San Benito, that based on the evidence in the record, it hereby recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve the proposed multi-use streets policy attached hereto and incorporated by reference in Exhibit A. And then, as I said, that was adopted unanimously by the Commission. I'd like to bring out a couple of details from the policy, which is in your packet. I would first note that we've called it, rather than a complete streets policy, a little bit differently, a multi-use streets policy, and I'll explain why we did that in just a moment. Well, I'll explain it now. It includes a dig once provision, so that when streets are constructed or reconstructed, there is provision for infrastructure, particularly for broadband and other utilities, placed within the street right-of-way in conduit form with pull lines and so on, so that the street does not have to be dug up again later on, 2-5 years from now, whatever, in order to run that conduit. That developers ultimately will be placing that infrastructure in place at the time that the street is initially constructed. The remainder of the complete streets policy is really fairly vanilla in terms of the past practice in other locations. But basically it says that all subdivision and roadway projects funded through all subdivision projects and all roadway projects funded through the county's capital program will be subject to the policy. So in other words, any time the county spends money or we ask the developer to spend money on building streets, they will use the complete streets policy and the resulting regulations as the guidance for building those streets. We're going to establish a checklist of pedestrian, bicycle, and transit accommodations that supports also vehicular accommodations, so that the full range of users is included in street design. And there's a presumption that all of those users, pedestrians, bicycles, and transit, will be a part of the streetscape, the users, unless that presumption is rebutted in some way. For example, if we're building a limited access highway, it's very unlikely that there would be pedestrians or bicyclists on that, and we would make provision for those folks elsewhere, in which case a complete street, under this definition, need not include those folks. And let me point out right here that an urbanized complete street in downtown Hollister or in a residential subdivision is a very, very different animal, will look very differently from a rural location where there may not need to be anything other than a graded shoulder for pedestrians or bicyclists to ride on. So there's quite a range of design options. We're not dictating anything in terms of specific designs here.
Yeah, Madam
We
Chair.
have a question.
Right there, because in the past we've had developments, small developments, 4 units, a property split way out in rural areas, and the county had, put in shoulder requirements, and it only stretched the length of that property, and all of a sudden the county road falls off to nothing. So how are we addressing that in this, or do we address it, or do we just have an easement? Because I think that the safety factor of that is
Sure.
a component.
And it's a point well taken. The complete streets policy, multi-use streets policy itself will not address that. However, it's my intent to go back through, as I'll talk about in a little bit, the zoning requirements, the subdivision requirements, the street design requirements, and make all of these things work together. The policy, thank you so much, Water. The policy of the county now is that if I'm developing a piece of property, I build out to the limits of my property the half width of the street, whether it's 2 lanes, 4 lanes, or whatever, and I will build the sidewalk, the street lights, the landscaping, whatever is on my side of the property. The intent, obviously, is that over a period of time that streetscape will fill in, and the county itself will not be on the hook to actually do that construction, to pay for that construction. In practice, sometimes that takes 20 years or longer to happen, and so you have this sort of broken tooth or missing tooth issue. It's something we need to deal with. It may be better to have the developer pay a bond or some other method of participating and not actually do the construction.
See, that would make
so that it's a more safe situation, or at least a continuous situation.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense, especially as the urban and rural start interfacing and complete those streets where we can and get something out of it, rather than someplace out on Lone Tree Road. You're putting in a shoulder a little bit
4
wider.
lots wide, yeah.
Yeah, because there's places in the county that...
I know, I've seen them.
Yeah, and I'd rather get a monetary contribution rather than...
I was going to offer later the example of Fairview Road, where we're going to look at some analysis of Fairview as it builds out. That's a place there's going to be considerable development pressure, and we don't want to have that happen there. So we're going to look at a corridor study, an entire length of the 6 miles or so of Fairview, and sort of pre-design it and understand how that will be phased in. So that's another example of a way to sort of approach that.
Okay.
So just to continue, the Complete Streets also addresses intersections, because we recognize that pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit and other users cross very busy streets, and so it's important to think about those crossing places themselves. Some of the soft side, if you will, is it's very important in my experience elsewhere to include training and public outreach on Complete Streets policies and issues. Training so that our staff knows what to do, what to look for, how to approach questions such as these that have come up, and design streets that are safe and reliable for everyone. and public outreach for the development community and for the community at large, so they know when they see a street being redesigned, or for the example at Fairview and Sunny Slope, where there's some very strange pavement markings right now, what those might mean. This is bike lanes that are crossing diagonally through the intersection. And finally, the Complete Streets program, the Multi-Use Streets program, will establish performance measures so that we can gauge progress as we roll the program out. There is, very importantly, a provision for exceptions to the Complete Streets requirements, both minor exceptions and more important exceptions. Minor exceptions will be handled administratively through the Resource Management Agency. More serious exceptions, proposed exceptions, will be brought before the Planning Commission, and there will be findings in much the same way that there would be for a variance to be granted in a public session, in a public hearing. And the developer or whomever would be able to present evidence, and we'd be able to hear from the community as well and make a finding of yes or no, the Complete Streets policy should be followed. And those are detailed in the staff report, actually in the multi-use streets policy that is included in your packet. So next steps, we'll be looking at, as I mentioned, the subdivision ordinance, the zoning ordinance, the street design guidelines, staff training, and education and outreach. And all of these things will occur over the next months and years, and particularly as we approach individual development projects. Concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I just want to say this is great. It's been a long time coming, and I see this as the connectivity that we've all been looking for, and the safety, because we really want to promote more, bicyclists, more walkers, and this is the way you're going to be able to encourage that if you have the safety, and the planning that goes with a complete street. So, thank you.
Thank you. The communities and the county are ideal for this sort of thing because the terrain is relatively flat, and it's a very small, sort of walkable kind of community, and it's just begging to happen. I really appreciate your vision in terms of the general plan, and including those policies in the general plan. It makes my life very easy.
Good.
Well, relatively easy.
Relative. Okay. Any comments from the public? Do you have any speaker cards, clerk of the board?
Do not.
Okay. Please come up and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name was for this one. Valerie Eglin, Reach San Benito Foundation, which is recreation, exercise, and community health, right?
Right.
So that's my issue. I have been following the Complete Streets program and discussions with early stages in COG, and working with Veronica Lozama with the bicycles out in San Juan Bautista. And I'm so excited about the fact that you truly consider the validity of expanding our roads, or being cognizant of when a road is being designed, whether it's by a developer or within our own county people, that they think about friendly, that when you're driving down a road, you perceive that your kids, your bicycle could follow that street next time you go to work easy. That you could, after work, get on a bike and there's safe passage. You can move. Also, in the unincorporated areas of the county where we've got to look forward to and build on tourism as a soft industry that will bring our county a lot of prosperity from the Pajaro to the Pinnacles. Right? So I'm very much for the positive vote on your part to support Mr. Barnes and all of the county employees in the movement forward in this. We have taken one step recently in presenting on Going Green with David Huboy. That should be up and running soon. It's being edited. Just a little bit of editing. We were pretty perfect when we presented. But it was an excellent discussion that is the beginning of public awareness, public education about complete streets and the environment of the county going forward, with an emphasis on we need this, and in November we're going to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, speakers? Okay, we'll bring it back for a vote.
Madam Chair,
or further discussion.
I'll make a motion. The county makes the finding that adoption of this policy is exempt from CEQA because it will have no adverse significant impacts on the environment, and adopt Resolution 2015-81 for San County multi-use streets policy.
Okay, there's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much, Brent. All right. The last item on our regular agenda before we go into closed session, item number 14.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be provided, presentation will be provided by our clerk of the board, Louis Valdez. And what I wanted to highlight for the board was, the last few years we've been spending quite a bit of time on the ERP system, on revamping how we do business to be more efficient. And one of the things that I mission our clerk is to look at the clerk of the board, look at the office, look at the needs, as well as scrutinizing how we're handling things, or handling agendas, document management, contracts, those types of things. So I want to thank Louis for all the work he's done up to date. He's done a lot of work on this, and today he's going to be presenting to you a new agenda management system, how to access it. So we wanted the public to be aware. There's going to be a new way to access and view the agendas. And the one thing, too, that I've noticed since coming on board 3 years ago is having to look and review agendas with only like 3 days or sometimes less notice, which is really tough when you're looking at 2,000 pages or more. And that you really need to have more time to look at it, to ponder over it, to reason, to ask questions. So I'm really happy that we have this new system in place where you can actually look and view data in advance, a lot more than 3 days. So anyways, I wanted to have Louis here present this project to you and kind of where we're at today. Louis?
Thank you, Ray, and Madam Chair, members of the board. Really excited to come to you today with this information and this presentation. We're going to do this in two steps. I'll do a short presentation with my PowerPoint, and then what I have asked Nathaniel Leary from IT to do is to be here to help all of you log on to the new portal. One of the priorities that Mr. Espinosa gave me to try and fulfill through the implementation of this system is to make sure that all of you as board members had as much advanced notice of all of the agenda items as they become available, so that you have time to review the material, to reach out to the departments, and to contemplate whatever decisions you want to make with regard to the policy questions that come before you. So we'll do that. I'll do the presentation, and then I'll ask Nathaniel to help you all log on to Novus, and we'll go through that as well. One thing that I do want to mention up front, I did have a conference call with the programmer from Novus. There is one small piece not missing, but yet to be completed, which should be done today. That's the minutes module. That will not be part of the presentation today, and I'll expand on the discussion about the video indexing, which was the topic of much discussion. So, technology upgrades and projects. One of the things that was provided as a priority by the CAO was to make sure that all of you had access to information, but not only the board, to make sure that the public had as much information as possible, and to be as innovative as possible in presenting that information to you and to the public. So One of the tenets of my graduate program was the consideration of innovative strategies and approaches. And one of those innovative strategies and approaches that has been very well fostered here in San Benito County by your CAO under his leadership is the implementation and the use of technologies. There are 4 principles, basically, that innovation revolves around, and they are the ones that you see up here on the monitor. One of them is to provide better evidence for decision-making. There is an effort among administration and management in public sector areas to base decisions on what the data show and what the data provides. So evidence-based decision-making is very much provided for and supported by the implementation and the use of technologies. It also provides for greater engagement of the public. That is one thing that in San Benito County, certainly that is not a problem, but the more opportunities that you present to people who are active voters, members of the public, the more information gets out and the better your mission as elected officials is understood and supported. So that's tenet number 2. The third one is investments in expertise and skill building. This is really important because through the implementation of technologies like the one that we have with New World that took place before I arrived, now with Novus and with Laserfish that's coming up, it creates a whole new set of skills and opportunities for employees to grow, for employees to learn new technologies and new strategies, new ways of thinking about how we're going to do our job and how to do it more efficiently and how to do it in a much more accessible manner. And the last one, of course, is closer collaboration with the private and social sectors. This is really important because there are a lot of folks out there who are in the private sector and part of the nonprofit sector who are very much interested in engaging with their local government. And there's really not a way to do that that's institutionalized and formalized. The use of technology and the access to all that information and those opportunities really provides for that kind of an environment and for those kinds of opportunities. So I wanted to make mention of that because the CAO has provided leadership in those areas, and it's made my job as the clerk much more effective and much easier, and it's really provided me an opportunity in the short almost 6 months that I've been here to grow and to learn. Can you believe that? It's unbelievable. Almost 6 months that I've been here to learn and grow from him, from the CAO and his experiences as the former IT director, and from all of you as the elected officials. So as an overview, I want to provide you a brief review of what we've done to date. What we've done so far, our hardware and software enterprise updates have included the installation of new hardware. It's called a TriCaster in the audiovisual room in collaboration with our local community media access partner, that's CMAP. So if any of you have been online recently, you will see that the graphics and you will see that the manner in which all of that information is presented is much improved. It's much more engaging and it's much cleaner and much more professional looking, if you will. Not to say that it was unprofessional, but it does give a sense of a much more professionally generated product, which is very important. We've also initiated the migration from our Questies database, which is where all the information with regard to agendas and meeting minutes and AIT packets that have been scanned in the past. That's going to begin in the next couple of weeks. We have had conversations with the folks from Laserfish, which is a presentation that we presented to you with Health and Human Services, and that scope of work has been received. There's going to be a parallel implementation between the clerk's office and Health and Human Services to implement that new system. That's going to also come into play when we start engaging with the implementation of the New World contract management module. I'm happy to report that to date, 2 departments have completed their reviews of contracts. I want to thank, she left, but Mary Gilbert was the first one who completed that, and the second one was HHSA. So we're well on our way to getting an update on a much more current list of contracts and what those terms are, and our ability to report that to the CAO's office in turn is going to enhance the ability of him to report to you all when those questions arise. And of course, we have the Novus agenda management solution. This is something we're really excited about. This is going to give each of you access to the agenda items as they appear. And one thing that you will see when we get into it here, it's going to allow the clerk's office, when one of you has an agenda item that you would like to have placed on the agenda, we do the best we can to make note of that. We're able to enter the item immediately at the meeting for the next agenda so that we don't forget that it's there. And if an item has to get moved, we can automatically move it. right at the meeting. So that's going to be really helpful to all of us. As I said, we coordinated with CMAP. We've got the new equipment in the video room. We also have wiring up here that was newly installed for our wonderful projector that everybody has grown to love and appreciate. And one of the things that is going to happen is in December, we have been waiting for the, and Mr. Supervisor Munzer understands this better than most since last night. One of the things we've been waiting for is the opportunity for the holidays to roll around so we can get the best possible deal on our new monitors that have yet to be purchased and installed so that we can provide you a much better quality picture and a much better opportunity to present the information to the audience here when they're in the board chambers. So that's already been pre-wired as part of the existing upgrade that we took the opportunity to do. And the last thing, of course, is part of the projector. We have some updated software on the laptop, which hopefully no one will disconnect the cable like they did last night to connect their own laptops, which will create a much more secure environment so we don't get hacked going forward. That's what it was. And, you know, that's what it was. And unfortunately, one of my colleagues from RMA took some considerable feedback from the board last night, but that was not his fault. So in any case, we're working on that. We're also working, as I said, the new monitors. You'll see that at the CAO's desk, and you may not have noticed at my desk, we have telephone handsets now. Okay, those telephone handsets are not necessarily going to be ringing during any of your meetings, but should an emergency arise or should we have the need to call out and get information to you during the course of the meeting, we can do that from here. I know it seems like an oversimplified kind of solution, but it's available, and I thought that was something that we could do. It also is going to give us the opportunity to communicate with the gentleman who's currently in the video room in case something goes wrong with our hardware. We don't have to get up and go over there. We can just do that. Last thing is the cameras that you see. We're trying to make provisions to obtain a better set of cameras. That's not in our budget this year, but we are working to try and find a solution to that. And that's something that for the future we're going to be working on, hopefully in conjunction with the City of Hollister and the City of San Juan Bautista. We have not yet approached them with that, but we will. As I said, the scope of work was received. Health and Human Services is going to be working collaboratively with us to do the Laserfish implementation. And the one thing that I did want to mention that is very important with regard to New World, not only is New World going to be integrated with Laserfish and the contract management module, but we have also been tasked by the CAO's office and by the auditor's office to do some research on obtaining the grants management module for New World. This is something that we discovered when we went to the New World conference in Dallas earlier this year. I actually attended that presentation. And that grants management module is going to be a tool that will help the county and the auditor's office comply with the CAFR requirements that are being called for with regard to grants management. And on your agenda today, you had a manual that the auditor's office submitted that speaks to the management of actual grants. So that is going to be done in conjunction with the continuous software implementations on an enterprise level that we are doing right now. So that being said, I would like to ask Nathaniel to help each one of you log in to the Nova system. I trust and see that you all have your preferred wireless connection device there. And so what I would like to ask all of you to do, if Nathaniel can kind of take a look at that, is to go to your web browser if you could. Open up a web browser that you may have open. I'd like to ask you all to log on to the board web portal, and you're going to type in the following web address. I'm going to actually do that with you.
I don't know which one it is. This one? Okay.
You're going to type in, without the www or the HTTP in front of it, you're going to type in San Benito novusagenda.com, and then a / and the words all together, board web.
Hold on, San Benito
dot novus agenda.com / board web. And since Mr. Munzer and I sat down last night, I think you have a little bit of a head start there.
Oh, I thought he was really smart.
He is incredibly smart.
What do you mean?
The forward slash didn't come on, but there it is.
Like the record to reflect the clerk didn't say
Board
that.
agenda.
Agenda or agendas?
Agenda.
Novus Agenda.
Yeah, got that.
.com.
.com.
Forward slash. Board.
That's what.
BOARD. Web. All
Once
together.
that comes up, but it's nice to get rid of that, huh? Whoops. Okay.
Board what?
Board Web.
Board web.
BOARD
Thank
WEB.
you.
Board.
Okay.
There you go.
And then we're going to create our password.
.com.
Correct.
File not found.
Okay. So since you have the HTTP there, we got to get rid of that.
Oh, okay.
So just type in SAN
Username.
and actually
There was a password.
you're there. Okay.
User is the same as password.
It's, the HTTP is coming up. I don't know why I put it there.
Okay, so it
Username is
wasn't my
user?
fault.
It's just the .com at the end of board. That's what was getting you.
Password is password. Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay. So I provided each one of you with a user ID and password. So if you could please type in user ID where it says username and your password, which is just the word password at this point.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's okay. They're going to change it.
Okay.
It doesn't show up when you type it in? Oh, how come it didn't show up?
There we go.
Okay.
Username is your
Okay.
M and then your last
Margie,
name.
did it come up?
It's coming up.
Okay.
Coming up right now.
Okay, so most of you, I think, have successfully logged in. You'll want to go in and change your password. Mr. Munzer has a program, an app on his phone that randomly generates passwords, so he might be a resource. But you will come up with this board view in front of you. Okay, this is the portal that the board will be able to view all of the agenda items on as they are uploaded into the system. Okay, now do you see the bars along the bottom here?
Mm-hmm.
Those bars represent the number of agenda items in each section of the agenda that have been uploaded. So if you take your mouse and you hover, say, over consent agenda, a little window is going to pop up to the right-hand side that says click to view items. Do you see that? Go ahead and click it. And another window will pop up with all of the agenda items that have been loaded into the consent agenda section for that meeting. Does everybody see that?
I'm not seeing it yet. I went to consent agenda and I pressed it and I got a window,
Yeah,
but it
same.
said no, nothing
Okay, so
has
it's
been
thinking at
flagged.
this point. Let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry. Where's your mouse pad? How do I? Oh, I just
It's
touch
on the
it. Oh, I'm
window,
sorry.
yeah. Yeah.
Did you open this in Safari or was it?
Safari.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
Okay, I did get that, but
Okay, so it's empty on this.
So it's empty. Okay.
So what you're going to want to do is go to this one here. Third. Okay, so
Okay.
third, and there you are.
I see what we're doing.
It's on the third, right?
Permissions are set. Must be.
Okay, so some of you have the permissions, some of you may not for some
Okay.
reason. So we're going to get Nathaniel to work on that.
Okay.
But in any case, let me show you what you have up here.
Is this okay?
And this is what's going to appear when you log on. Each one of those is the agenda item that's been loaded into the system. What you are going to be able to do is you can hover your mouse and click each one of, or I'm sorry, you can take your mouse and do you see this little thing over here that looks like a piece of paper?
Yes.
You click that, view, and that will load the AIT that's been loaded in by the person who's entered the agenda item. So you'll be able to read that online. Okay? The second thing you're going to be able to do is if you scroll to the bottom of the document, there is a blue link a blue hyperlink, that is the backup information for the agenda item. So if you click that, it's going to open that item up, it's going to download it, and you'll be able to review it. So instead of waiting until the agenda is published online, you can view that as each agenda item is loaded into the system. So you'll be able to see it if it's loaded 2 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in advance, whatever the case may be. Okay? If you have any questions about it, you can certainly talk to the CAO or the relevant department head about the item. And the thing that's really great about this is if you click this back button, there is a little bubble with the plus sign there. And Mr. De La Cruz, I think you were particularly interested in this one here. This is where you can type in your notes. Okay? I really like this item, but I'm not voting for it.
Yep. And where's my pizza?
But don't say that because it's a Brown Act violation. Okay? So don't do that. Okay. But you can do that. I'm not going to do that. But you can type in basically whatever notes you feel you need to have, and you click Save, and the comment is saved. You see the message there. You go back, and now what you can do is if you want to bring this item up, if you want to pull it from consent, you click the flag button there, okay, the little box, and you close it, and what's going to happen is it's going to update the system, and down here you'll see that you have one reviewed item. And if you go and click that one reviewed item, it's going to come up, and it's going to basically have no plus sign, and you'll remember that that is a comment that you entered. You can review that. Okay. What we're trying to do right now is we're trying to come up with the capability to have you to let you print out all the comments at once from all your items. We haven't gotten there yet. Okay. But this particular item or this particular portal is going to be made available to all of you, to the CAO, to County Council, and to some people here in the administration building. Okay. So this is what you will be able to use 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from any device that you have to look at those agenda items. Okay. So that's that. Now, what we did this particular week was, let me go to the county website. We've gone ahead and put up the agenda on the public portal. And I think, Mr. Botello, you were saying that somebody was having a really long trouble downloading the PDF version of it. Well, the beauty of this system is that it has an HTML version, and basically if you click the button that says Online Agenda, I think I've showed this to some of you, this version of the agenda automatically creates the hyperlinks, which means we don't have to take the time in the clerk's office to link each one into a PDF. The blue links that you see here are all agenda items. So if you click on each one, say Health and Human Services, the AIT is going to open up. You'll be able to scroll down. There are the documents. It's going to download it as a PDF, and you're able to open it. And there you are. Okay. Now, you'll see that we have the old or the current version of the AIT in there. We did that for your benefit just so you can see how we're transitioning from one to the other. Okay.
Now, from that AIT, can you do the same thing as you did in Novus on the other?
Yes.
Where you can go down to the bottom and click in to get the...
That is exactly what you'll be able to do. You'll have access to the exact same AIT and the exact same backup information. Okay. The good thing about this is if you want to save it to your desktop individually, you can do that. Or you can print it, or you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, that's the really good thing about Novus and this particular system. If you have a very slow internet connection, this makes it much easier to download that information. This is an issue in some of the rural areas of the county where internet coverage is not very good. This allows for a little bit easier way to download that information. You don't have to download the entire document. You can do the individual item if you want. Okay, so that makes it very, very easy. So that is the Novus agenda system, and this is the internal portal that we have. And I'm going to log on one more time to show you this. The great thing about this particular system is that instead of the clerk entering each and every single item, what happens is now all the departments have their own logon, and they can enter the item individually. All we're going to do is edit it and compile it and help the CAO with completeness of issues on each one of the items. So we have the November 17th meeting, and during the meeting that you all just conducted, I believe I heard somebody wanting to have an item agendized for the homeless shelter action plan. Mr. Rivas put that on there. I believe we had a question about polling, and that was there. Mr. De La Cruz, we put that on there right away. Well, we put it on there anyway. And we have a certificate of recognition that Mr. Rivas emailed us about that. I saw an email as I was in the meeting. I went ahead and put that on there to make sure it got approved. So you will see that we can do those things right away, immediately, during the course of the meeting. If for some reason you don't take action, or you want to move it, or the CAO wants to pull it and push it to another meeting, we have the ability to do that as well through this particular system. So it really saves an extraordinary amount of time, effort, and it makes the ability for us to be much more effective, like proofreading documents, a much higher priority. Mr. Botello, yes.
This sounds great. Now that you got half your week's work done already, what are you going to do the rest of the time?
Well, Mr. De La Cruz has several requests I need to work on fulfilling.
We're going to give you more work.
But the truth of the matter is, this creates an efficiency of scale for us. And we have several other projects that we are working on. We are working on the contract management module. We are working on the records management project, wherein through the assistance of the Resource Management Agency, we are moving all of our documents from the Crosslofts area over to the old courthouse building, where the auditor has given us permission to place them temporarily to begin indexing and archiving those projects. The other areas that we need to address, that from an operational point of view we're addressing with the software, is policy. We need to write policies for all these. Agenda management policy, a boards and commissions policy. We also need to focus, one of the things that I've identified and that I've mentioned to the CAO is we get a lot of phone calls that have to do with the Board of Supervisors, a lot of constituent service calls. And so I'm looking at a particular piece of software that maybe we can implement. I actually contacted the chair of the board, and I spoke with somebody in Congressman Farr's office about the kind of constituent management software that they use to be able to manage that information as well. So I think those are all areas and those are all opportunities that we have to grow. I'm sure the CAO will find something for us to be able to do in the coming months now that we have the time to do that. But this is one of the reasons we didn't want to speak to the issue of staffing. But now that we are pretty much resolving these issues now, I think we're going to have a little bit better idea of how we're going to be able to approach that question going forward. Okay.
Thank you.
So any questions at all?
No, any questions?
The answer is still no.
He wanted popcorn to go with this presentation.
The popcorn, Mr. De La Cruz, is a module that Novus is working on programming as we speak.
Any
Okay.
questions or comments from the public? Okay. Well,
All right.
Thank you
so
all. Much.
And we'll work on those permissions for you from Nathaniel's end.
Okay.
Yeah. Jaime and I missed the days when we used to get two big, thick binders like that. And it was a miracle how the clerk's office was able to put them together. In fact, we all got this for the benefit this afternoon, and it's one agenda item. But we appreciate the work.
Yeah, I do too. Thank you so much for your effort, and thank you, CAO, for bringing this forward, and staff everywhere. That is Nathaniel, all of you. This is going to be. We're going to come into our own here now, finally, with technology. So, okay, we'll move on to closed session items. If our council could please introduce those two items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of Supervisors will now adjourn into closed session to discuss agenda item number 15 on today's agenda items number 15 and 16 on today's agenda. Agenda item number 15 is to meet in closed session to confer with the county's labor negotiators. The agency designated representatives are Allison Hauk, Ray Espinoza, Joe Paul Gonzalez, Melinda Casillas, Georgia Cochran, and Steve Coffey. The employee organizations involved are the Institutions Associations, Law Enforcement Management, Management Employees Group, SEIU Local 521, the General Unit Employees, SEIU Local 2015, IHSS, Deputy Sheriff's Association, confidential management, department heads, and unrepresented employees. The authority to meet can be found in California Government Code Section 54957.6. In regards to agenda item number 16, the board will meet and confer regarding a public employee performance evaluation of the county administrative officer. The authority to meet can be found in California Government Code Section 54957. Thank you.
Okay, anybody from the public that would like to comment or ask questions on these two items? Okay, we'll adjourn to closed session. Thank you so much.
Too late.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. You were not fast enough.
Good morning, Supervisors. Christina Chavez-Wyatt, San Benito County resident. I had the pleasure of meeting with Ray for about 45 minutes on Friday, and I wanted to apprise him of a great opportunity I think that you might have in the upcoming, maybe the first quarter next year, to have a State of the County address and invite residents, community members, et cetera, to talk about the progress that you've made over the last couple of years, weighing the tide of recession, coming from the red back into the black. And a lot of that's attributed to your leadership, the work of your department heads, and Ray as your leader. So I'm hoping that you give the utmost consideration of that planning in the future and getting some good feedback from a resident as you go into his review. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else from the public? Okay, we'll adjourn to closed session this time. We will.
Did you hear? Hey, Anthony, did you hear about
Thank
our
you, Mr.
quarterback?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I know.
Okay.